Early in the morning, the police received two alarming calls. Upon arriving at the scene, officers were met with a shocking sight. However, understanding what had happened turned out to be more difficult than they had anticipated. It wasn't until 13 years later that the perpetrator was finally brought to justice. Heidi Firkus was born on December 14, 1984, in a small American town. She grew up in a close-knit family, performed well in school, and was an active child. In high school, Heidi met a boy named Nick Firkus, who was 2 years older than her. They soon started dating, and 2 years later, they got married. The couple was considered a model to follow. Friends and acquaintances said that Heidi and Nick's marriage was perfect. They had no conflicts, traveled often, and had ambitious plans for the future. Heidi worked at her father's company, while Nick was a director at a carpet cleaning business. A few years after their wedding, the couple moved into a new house, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It seemed like they had found true happiness. However, everything changed on April 25, 2010. At 6:32 a.m., an emergency call was made from their home. It was Heidi on the line. She said someone was trying to break into their house. She was frightened and gave the dispatcher their address. But then a loud bang, a woman's scream, and sudden silence followed. The call was cut off. The operator attempted to call back, but no one answered. By that time, the police were already on their way. Minutes later, another emergency call came in from the same number. This time, it was Nick. He was screaming and crying, begging for the police and an ambulance to come. He told the operator that someone had broken into their home. According to Nick, after hearing the commotion, he told his wife to call the police while he grabbed a shotgun and went downstairs. There, he encountered an unknown man wearing a hood. A struggle ensued, during which the shotgun fired twice. One shot hit Nick in the leg, while the other struck Heidi in the back. When police arrived at the house, they found Nick injured and Heidi already dead. Nick was taken to the hospital, where he received the necessary medical care. His wound was not life-threatening. Meanwhile, investigators began examining the crime scene. The first thing they noticed was that there were no signs of forced entry. The front door lock was completely intact. This suggested that the intruder may have had prior access to the house or possessed a duplicate key. However, police also considered the possibility that Heidi and Nick had simply forgotten to lock the door before going to bed. On the first floor, investigators found evidence of a struggle, a lot of blood, and Nick's shotgun. However, there were no significant leads. Authorities began searching the surrounding area for the suspect, but even the police dogs were unable to pick up a trail. Investigators then turned to the neighbors for information. One neighbor reported that between 6:15 and 6:20 a.m., he heard a car speeding down the street at an incredibly high speed. Another neighbor mentioned that at around 6:20 a.m., he heard a loud, piercing male scream. Several others confirmed this. Investigators concluded that the scream likely belonged to Nick, but something didn't add up. Heidi had called emergency services at 6:30 a.m., yet her husband's scream had been heard about 10 minutes earlier. At the same time, the intruder could have only been in the house for a few minutes. Something wasn't right. Nick stated that he woke up around 6 a.m. to get a drink of water. As he walked past the front door, he heard a noise and realized that someone was trying to break in. Panicked, he ran upstairs to wake his wife. He grabbed his shotgun and told Heidi to call 911. As they started descending the stairs, intending to escape through the back door, the intruder had already made it inside. The suspect then lunged at Nick, attempting to wrestle the gun away from him. During the struggle, the shotgun discharged twice. The first shot hit Heidi in the back, while the second struck Nick in the leg. After that, the intruder fled, and Nick called the police. The suspect's motives remained unclear. Nick was unable to provide a composite sketch of the intruder since the man was wearing a black hoodie with the hood up. The only detail Nick could recall was that the perpetrator was tall, approximately 182 to 189 centimeters, and weighed around 100 kilograms. Investigators considered several possible motives: burglary, a targeted killing, and Nick's potential involvement. However, no one initially believed that Nick could be responsible. After all, Heidi had called 911 herself to report a break-in, and both families insisted that the couple had no issues. But as the investigation unfolded, a different picture emerged. Detectives discovered that the couple was facing serious financial troubles. The most shocking detail? Nick and Heidi were supposed to move out of their home the very next day, April 26, 2010. Coincidence or not? Yet, investigators noticed that there were no signs of packing in the house. Back in 2005, Nick had taken out 2 loans to buy their home. He made payments consistently until 2008, when he abruptly stopped. As a result, the bank decided to foreclose. The house was auctioned off, and the couple was ordered to vacate by April 26, 2010. In addition to that, Nick had accumulated other unpaid debts totaling $20,000. After speaking with Heidi's mother, investigators speculated that Heidi might not have known about the debts or their impending eviction. The fact that the house showed no signs of preparation for a move suggested she was unaware. Heidi's mother recalled that her daughter once confided in her about finding overdue payment notices, but Nick reassured her that it was just a mistake. It was hard to believe they were in debt given their comfortable lifestyle. When police confronted Nick about this, he insisted that Heidi was fully aware of their financial struggles. He claimed that they simply hadn't decided where to go next and were too ashamed to tell their families that they were losing their home. Despite continuing their efforts, investigators found no concrete evidence linking Nick to Heidi's murder. They repeatedly called him in for questioning, and at first, he cooperated. But as time went on, he grew frustrated with being treated as a suspect in his wife's death. Eventually, he hired a lawyer and stopped speaking with the police. Nick's lawyer insisted that he was a victim and even hired an artist to create a composite sketch based on Nick's description, something that immediately raised suspicions. Previously, Nick had claimed he never saw the intruder's face. Despite this inconsistency, flyers with the suspect's image were distributed across the city, and calls started coming into the police. However, none of the tips led anywhere, and the case reached a dead end. Investigators couldn't prove Nick's guilt, even though he remained their primary suspect. No one could say for sure whether Nick was the killer or if someone else was responsible, but one thing was clear: the murderer was still free. 2 years later, Nick remarried. His new wife, Rachel Watson, was someone he had known before, and they bonded over shared past traumas. They went on to have 3 children, eventually needing a larger home. Due to Nick's poor credit history, he asked his parents to take out a loan in their name. He made payments regularly, and the family appeared financially stable, until history repeated itself. Rachel later discovered letters stating that they were at risk of eviction due to unpaid property taxes. It turned out that Nick had never paid a single tax bill, and the house was being prepared for auction. When Rachel confronted him, he brushed it off as a mistake and assured her he would fix it. But she didn't believe him. Remembering that Nick had faced similar financial issues in his previous marriage, she made the decision to leave him. She took the children and filed for divorce. A year after their divorce, in 2021, authorities decided to reopen Heidi's murder case. A new detective, Nicole Sives, was assigned to investigate. Nicole chose to focus on Heidi's 911 call, hoping to uncover something that had been previously overlooked. She consulted forensic audio experts who analyzed the recording. Shockingly, they found no evidence of a third person in the house at the time of the call. According to Nick, the intruder had been fighting him for control of the shotgun. But the call contained no background sounds indicating a struggle. As Nicole reviewed past interviews with Nick, another inconsistency caught her attention. He claimed that he woke Heidi up, grabbed his shotgun, and they headed downstairs to escape through the back door. But he also stated that he let Heidi walk ahead of him. This struck Nicole as odd. Why would a man holding a loaded gun let his wife go first when he knew there was a dangerous intruder inside? Nick had always maintained that the shotgun went off accidentally during a struggle. He claimed the gun was at waist level when it fired. But forensic analysis of Heidi's wounds told a different story. The bullet entered her back at a downward angle, meaning the shotgun must have been positioned at head level when it was fired. Armed with new evidence, Nicole handed the case over to prosecutors. In May 2021, Nick was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. His trial began in January 2023. After reviewing the evidence, the jury found Nick guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During his final statement, Nick maintained his innocence. His family also continued to believe that he had nothing to do with Heidi's death. But despite their support, justice had finally been served, 13 years after Heidi's tragic murder. And that concludes our coverage of this tragic story. If you found this video informative or thought-provoking, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates on cases like these. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to share this video with your friends and give it a thumbs up if you found it valuable. Thank you for watching.